Regrets and redemption. I knew I messed up when the dean called my father and he decided to come to campus. No matter what I did, he ignored my existence. All he seemed to care about was his business and trying to maintain a clean image. He threw money at any problem. It was a laugh. I did not even feel anything for Rhiannon. So it had been a bit funny when we were caught in the dean's office. He on the other hand did not think so and said he was tired of my constant transgressions. Then, they did tests on both of us and discovered that we were under the influence of alcohol, which was a punishable offense. When my dad came, he told me that I was facing expulsion. He was tired of how he was always getting called to fix my messes. Imagine if the media found out about this. We are in the middle of a merger. He roared. Dad, chill. It was just for fun. He can't really expel me, can he? I asked. You have been linked to so many pranks and rule breaking. Last time you had weed in your room. You keep on saying that you will do better. Yet I find myself in this very office half of the time. Who do you think you are? He was getting upset, which was new since he kept a cool and calm composure at all times. So, you are just going to let them expel me? I asked. Yes, your uncle has a connection in military school. Maybe it is time you served your country. He smiled like the Cheshire Cat. Knowing that he had me. Dad, please don't. I spoke. I will help you out, but you have to do something for me, he said. What? 2 months later, I only got a week's suspension, then I got back to college. Now that I was back home for the holidays, I had to pull through with Dad's plan. I checked myself in the mirror for the millionth time. Then I went downstairs. I saw the back of her head first, whitish blonde hair. Not a single one out of place. Her laughter was controlled and posh if laughter could be posh. When I sat down, I looked into her eyes and instantly disliked her. She looked me up and down. A ginger? That was all she said. What? I asked. Everyone at the table was silent. You are shorter than you looked in your photos, she continued. I looked at my dad and he gave me a look to just go with it. She was rude, pretentious, and crass. By the end of the night, I knew I could not spend the rest of my life with her. But my father was firm. He needed her father's investment, and that allegiance would bring us more money. I gritted my teeth and promised to do better with Violet. The next day, I had a date with her, and she arrived half an hour late. The thing that irked me was the way she treated the waiter. I might have been raised in a family with money, but one thing my father taught me when we were still close was to treat everyone with respect. In the middle of the date, she answered a phone call, with me right there. Then, for 10 minutes straight, she gossiped about her own friends, and I just watched. I did not like her at all, and I was already imagining getting married to her, and it seemed like a fate. Worse than death. Well, where is my present? She asked. You're what? I asked. You are supposed to be courting me, yet you send me no gifts. She rolled her eyes. I did not know I had to, I explained. Gosh, and I will be stuck with you for my whole life, she groaned. Well, I felt the same way. Violet was her father's only daughter, and she also had a twin whom they called Lou. Lou was out of town, so I never got to meet her. I have never been so exhausted by anything as Violet made me. I had to buy her gifts, be her date to events, and drop everything when she called. I did it all because I knew my dad could go back on his word. I went back to college and still had to regularly meet up with her so that she could keep up appearances on her social media. To the world, we were a young couple in love, belonging to two powerful families. But on the inside, I hated her guts, but I had to make her happy. When she touched or even kissed me, I felt myself recoil. My aversion to her was even worse than my one to Rhiannon. I got a message in the middle of class that she needed me. She was going on a trip out of town and one of her friends bailed. Her brother was also going to come along, since I was ahead in my coursework because I was good at school if I focused. I agreed and resolved to stay drunk the whole weekend so that I could blur her out. I got into the car with her, and the driver was just about to head off when we heard a shout. I turned around and saw a guy running to the car. He quickly opened the door and then took off his hoodie. I was so glad that she was in front, and I was behind her seat, because the shock that went through me when I saw him must have been evident in my face. I remembered the dark janitor's closet, him pulling me in and showing me with intense kisses, sneaking into each other's rooms after curfew and getting up to no good. The fire and intensity of our secret, which continued to haunt me long after I left boarding school. There was Louis, the only guy I had ever slept with and the only person I was ever attracted to, and I could see by his stare that he remembered every single detail, both good and bad. I looked away from him for the rest of the trip, but his presence beside me burned. We arrived at the hotel a few hours later, and we were both stuck with the pleasure of carrying Violet's bags. "Why did you fire Tristan?" Louis asked her. "Because he was 5 minutes late. I almost missed my photo shoot," she explained. "Wouldn't have been a bad idea," I said lowly just as I heard a deep chuckle beside me. I locked eyes with him and smiled, then quickly looked away. Being around him was difficult, and being around his sister was impossible. So I stuck to hanging out with the other 2 guys, her friends' boyfriends. That night, I decided not to go out with the others but to have an early night. I suddenly got a knock on my door. While was only wearing a towel around my waist because I had just gotten out of the shower. But Louis was at my door, and he was holding what looked like one of my bags. "I think we mixed bags," he asked, but I swore I felt him eyeing me, sending shivers down my spine. "Of course, let me check. You can come in." I went to go check for his bag. As I was handing it to him, our hands touched a bit, and I remembered how we had snuck out of PE and had a rendezvous in the gym lockers. We nearly got caught, but it was so thrilling. "So, you are getting married to my sister. How did that come about?" he asked. "Long story. Why did you not go out?" I asked. "I do not like her friends either. I was thinking, a night in, maybe watch a movie or read a book." "Why did you not go? You seem loved up with her," he said. "I know she's your sister, but," I started. "She's terrible. Cedric, we have to talk about what happened at boarding school," he said. "You left without saying goodbye." "That is what happened," I pointed out. "I am sorry about that. But don't you feel," he started, "it was probably for the best. Let us just be friends now," I asked. "You are right, just friends. So, wanna hang out tonight?" he asked. I quickly got dressed, then we ordered some snacks and watched movies together. I missed everything about him. His humor, quick wit, and tendency to say the most random things. He went back to his room in the middle of the night, but I went to bed buzzing. The next morning, we avoided the rest of Violet's posse and had breakfast on our own. We used that time to catch up on each other's lives. He was also in college, was a straight-A student, and in line to inherit his father's business as soon as he was done with school, which was the same for me. During that trip, we found any excuse to spend time with each other. I avoided my fiancée to be as if she was the very plague, and she did not notice. I noticed her flirting with a few guys, but I did not feel an inkling of jealousy. This was going to be a loveless marriage, and I had come to terms with it. I got his number at the end of the trip and kept on texting him throughout the semester. Sometimes, we would meet up on common ground and spend hours with each other. We were inseparable and our parents thought that we were best friends, which was what we agreed on. But do you ever really lose feelings for your first love? There were moments when we connected so deeply that it felt like there were sparks between us. There were so many times we came close to giving in and kissing, but we knew what was at risk. My father would never forgive me if I sabotaged the deal. One night, I was at their house, having dinner with her, Louis, and their father. That was until my stomach started to feel very funny. "You look pale," Louis said. "Doesn't he always?" She snickered. "Violet," her dad warned. "Fine. Here, have some water." She gave me some. I did not feel better after that, and I felt myself beginning to sweat. "Are you sure you do not need the hospital?" Louis asked. "I am fine," I sighed. Then suddenly, I dropped the fork that was in my hand. "Spend the night here," their dad offered. Despite my protests, he and Louis forced me to spend the night. I went to sleep in the guest room, but just as I was about to fall asleep, I saw Louis coming into the room. "You always downplay your health," he said. "Maybe." I laughed. He lay down next to me. I gave him an inquisitive look and he spoke. "I am worried. I need to check up on you during the night. If you want a barricade, then it is fine." He reached for the pillow. "No, it is fine," I said as I drifted off to sleep. I had a fever when I woke up, and he insisted on taking care of me. Their dad was on a business trip, so the only other person in the house was Violet. She refused to see me because she was scared of catching it. After all, our engagement was in just a few days. But Louis nursed me back to health, and my feelings for him grew immensely during those few days. I was soon better enough to finally go home. But before I did, I thanked him. "You put a lot on hold for me, thank you," I said. "I will always take care of you, even if you are not mine," he said. I could not help it and leaned forward to kiss him. Hungrily, he kissed me back and it felt like the rightest thing I had done in a long time. We swore not to do it again after we pulled away but found ourselves in that same position a few times. I felt bad about sneaking around, but I loved him so much. No amount of time could erase how I felt about him. When he said that he loved me, I wanted to ask him to run away with me at that very moment. But that was just a fantasy. In the weeks leading up to my engagement, we snuck around so that we could be together. We planned to stop before everyone found out, but I found myself texting him in the middle of the night most times. After we made love, we would cuddle for the longest time and pretend that no one mattered. We would pretend that I was not being forced to marry his sister, who was a terrible person. But time has a way of being treacherous, and I found myself turning the ring I had to put on her finger over and over. It was her father's birthday, and I was going to have to propose to her so it would seem like a surprise. We were selling the story that we were madly in love so that the press would not think it was a PR stunt. In the middle of the party, I got a signal from my dad that it was time for me to do it. I locked eyes with Louis, and he turned away from me. I did not blame him in the slightest. It hurt me to let him watch me put a ring on his sister's finger. I got down on my knees and recited a speech my dad's publicist wrote for me. My dearest Violet, I got down on my knees. Everyone looked at us, and she faked a look of surprise. From the first day that I met you, I fell in love. You are so beautiful, down to earth, and make me want to be a better man. I want to spend my whole life making you happy. So will you please do me the honor of marrying me? I asked. There were cheers and chants from people egging her on to say yes. She smiled sweetly. No, absolutely not, everyone gasped, and I was taken aback. This was not part of the plan. Violet, her father started. He is sleeping with my brother. Now why would I want to get married to him? The few journalists who were there started bombarding us with questions. I got up and without another word, fled the room. I caught my father's eye when I was leaving, but I could not read what he was feeling. I heard a lot of shouting in the room, but I went to the bathroom and locked myself there for a while. Suddenly, someone knocked. Son, please come out, my father said. No, please, we need to talk about this right now, he said. I reluctantly opened the door, then he smothered me in a hug. What was going on? I did not get to ask any questions before we went downstairs, and I could hear a loud voice shouting angrily. You have disgraced this family for your own personal agenda. You should have said something sooner, Louis' dad said. I am not at fault here. They are. Dad, he is gay. You need to disown him, she said. Why? So you can inherit everything. You have embarrassed this family in front of the whole world. You should have come to me with this first, he said. Violet, I am sorry, I said. Why are you apologizing? My dad asked. I betrayed her too. I am sorry that I have feelings for your brother, I said. I do not care. You could have slept with the maid for goodness sake. But my brother does not deserve the inheritance. I do, she groaned. You know that you were going to get a share in the company. But now, I want you out of my house. You are incredibly spoilt and entitled. Dad, pack your stuff and leave, he said again. I could not believe that she had been petty enough to oust us out in public when we were both ready. Our fathers were old-fashioned, but not immune to change, in their own words. If you want to be together, we won't stop you. And that way, our families will remain linked, my dad said. Thanks for the blessing, Louis said. They went off to talk business while we remained there, staring at each other. So, he began. So, I looked down shyly. Now that the cat is out of the bag, will you go out on a proper date with me? He asked. Now, I asked. No, dummy, he chuckled. Unless you want to finish the food left behind together, I said. Well, sure, but you still owe me dinner. I linked my arm to his. Finally, we were able to freely date each other without worrying about what everyone else would think. For months, we did long distance while we finished our degrees. Then we both started working at our father's company, which had now merged. With our father's business knowledge and our teamwork, we were able to bring the company to new heights. At the end of the year, we were asked which charity we wanted to donate to. And guess what we chose? We chose to donate to an LGBTQ+ center in the city. We wanted to do anything to help our community and also inspire others to not be afraid to be who we were. We did not hear from Violet again after she left town, but there were rumors that she now had a rich boyfriend. Soon, we forgot about her and focused on our lives together. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our rainbow force and stay wholesome.